Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Rodrigo.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, we plumb the catacombs of Ghost Castle, then prowl the sewers with Casey Jones and walk the various walks that we might better talk. Miscellaneous talks. We're going to field the team of Schleikachu, Doug Trigo, and Matthew too, and it's very effective. We'll travel across the land, searching far and wide, teaching spoilerites to understand the power that's inside. The Major Spoilers podcast is going to be the very best, and it's on the air.
Welcome to issue 1143 of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and checking us out this week. Matthew, did you just tell everybody that you were evil, that you're the bad guy? Isn't Meowth the bad guy?
Mewtwo, well, Mewtwo has he's like a science experiment, so he is
Matthew
bad, but it's more of like it's more of like a you made me this way, humans now suffer the consequences kind of a thing. So he's also sympathetic.
Yeah, there you go. He's Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right, very cool. Dear listeners, are you awesome? Of course you are. And that's why we love each and every one of you. And that's why I do want to say, get over to the Major Spoilers Discord. Jump in there, join the Major Spoilers channel, or join the comic book channel, or join the whatever channel. We've got so many of them. If you're into sports, get in there and talk sports. It's all a lot of fun, and people are just waiting for you right now. Growing group. I mean, every week I'm seeing new people join our Discord, and we're so happy to have you there. There is a link in the show notes. Get to it. All right, let's take a look at some reviews for this week. And what do we got on the playlist? Oh, let's go back a week and look and see what IDW Publishing released last week, Matthew, with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Casey Jones, #1.
Wait, man, why you gotta make it sound like that? So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Casey Jones, #1, written by Alex Packnadel, art by Omen Paths, is a story picking up from the pages of the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book. Casey, you remember Casey, he has a funny hat. He was played by Elias Cotis, was shot in recent issues. He was shot by the district attorney of New York City, and it was touch and go, but he is now officially awake and alive. The problem is he's also dealing with some serious post-traumatic stress issues.
From that, or from his father's spousal abuse?
Little of everything.
Okay.
6 of 1.
Yeah.
But mostly because of this. And also, Casey is one of those guys who deals with his stress, and really all stresses, by putting on a funny mask and beating the snot out of people that he believes are wrong. Now, in his defense, Casey does have a pretty strong moral compass. So he's beating up on criminals, bullies, people who would attack, innocent creatures. And right now, the city is filled with people who have been mutated into animal-human hybrids. He ends up falling in with one of them, who I think is maybe a lemur? Got the big eyes and the ringtail. Some sort of mustelid in any case, and ends up saving her, but also, encountering a man with superhuman strength. Thankfully, he's also got 4 friends who are mutants and turtles and ninjas. I don't remember what they call themselves. They're also teenagers. Anyway, so the turtles show up, things are happening, and people are like, Casey, are you sure you're okay? Casey, are you dealing well? Casey, do you need an adult, Casey? And by the end of the issue, it becomes clear that no, Casey is not okay. Yes, Casey does need an adult. And most importantly, Casey is not going to necessarily walk out of this one unchanged. I really unexpectedly enjoyed this issue. Noel Penn's art is kind of wonderful, and it reminds me of sort of melange of a little of Dan Jurgens and kind of that more modern style that we see in a lot of books. We see, at Zenoscope, we see at IDW, we see, the very graphic, rounded, kind of, pretty style almost, sort of a variation on that Al Rio stuff. But most importantly, it's actually tied together with a story that really does kind of delve a little bit into the mind and the PSD of Casey Jones. 4 slices of meatloaf for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Casey Jones #1. I believe it's one of 5, if I'm not mistaken. But I would say it's worth checking out, especially if you remember Casey's book in the 90s and you're like, has he grown up? Time to find out.
Very cool. That is out last week from IDW Publishing. This week from Titan Comics, we have Conan the Barbarian, Scourge of the Serpent #1 from Jim Zub and Ivan Gill. This is another one of the big crossover events that they did about a year ago, I want to say, maybe not quite a year ago, when they did this, where they took all of Robert E. Howard's characters and they kind of threw them into a story that both spanned the decades or centuries, as well as bringing them all together. This is interesting because this has to do with some Serpent people, maybe some Thulsa Doom stuff, maybe some set stuff. And in the first issue, it is a good setup, I think, because there is something happening through the ages that once again is connecting all of these heroes together. The downside, and so I will say, Jim Zub is a fantastic artist, or I'm sorry, fantastic writer. Ivan Gill, a fantastic artist for this. The downside is that when Titan Comics does something like this, when Jim Zub does something like this, it does require your knowledge of who is Cull of Atlantis, who are all of these other characters that have appeared in Robert E. Howard books. And so it feels very much like a new reader trying to jump into the Legion of Superheroes in the 5 Year Later arc, where it's like you're kind of expected to know all of these people. And if you don't, that's okay, because you may figure it out when you go. In this case, they're not even doing that with Scourge of the Serpent. They're kind of telling you who these people are through exchanges, but it's up to you to go and find out, well, who is Cull the Conqueror, or who is this person, or who is this person, and how do they relate to one another. The last time they did this, they introduced a character that I was like, I have no idea who this was. And I actually had to reach out to Jim Zub and say, who is this guy? Is this supposed to be a Robert E. Howard stand-in? He's like, oh, no. This is a character from this book from da-da-da-da. And so I was very lost in that. And it kind of does take you out. The other problem with this is that Conan is a reskin of Cull the Conqueror when a Cull story was rejected. And Robert E. Howard took that story, replaced the word Cull with Conan, and shipped it off to another publisher who accepted it. So even in the art of Cull and Conan, even though they're separated by thousands of years, first time you see Cull, you might be thinking, oh, that's Conan. And that's kind of the problem that I have with this issue. Still very fascinating, still very interesting. I want to see where this plays out. Now, this isn't going to be the big crossover event like they did between all the Conan books and a standalone novel, but it's still interesting enough that I want to read more. The biggest downside is you kind of need to know everything. And so that's why I'm giving Conan the Barbarian, Scourge of the Serpent #1, 3.5 slices out of 5.
Stephen.
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And it is tangentially related, but you can tell me to shut up. So, Thulsa Doom, voiced by James Earl Jones.
Well, played by James Earl Jones, yeah.
Okay. So James Earl Jones sold his voice rights to Lucasfilm. Could Lucasfilm theoretically let someone making a film that featured Thulsa Doom license the voice?
I do not know what the agreement was with James Earl Jones and Lucasfilm. As far as my understanding of the agreement is that James Earl Jones recorded his voice, and someone could correct me on this. That's fine. James Earl Jones recorded his voice specifically for future uses of Darth Vader, not for, hey, you have the rights to my likeness going forward. So that would be a tricky negotiation between the James Earl Jones estate, Lucasfilm, and whoever currently has the Robert E. Howard publishing company. That would be up to them to decide if they wanted to use James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom. Also, interesting, Thulsa Doom was not originally a Conan villain. He was a Kull villain. And so that also makes things a little tricky when you sit down and try to read Conan, especially if your history is Marvel Comics, Dark Horse Comics, and the movies.
So you have to go and talk to his children, Shirley and Casey Jones.
No. Well, no. No. There's an estate set up that would be dealing with that, with lawyers and everything. So, yeah, it is complicated in that sense. I think that if all of the parties could come to an agreement and say, yes, this is an ethical use of James Earl Jones, and if the family or whoever that owns the likeness rights would say, yes, this is something that he would agree in, and it's not just a money grab for the family so they could get some more bucks, and they all agree that it's ethical, then I think you could probably do something like that in some kind of an animated series. But in the books, Thulsa Doom is a man, and he's a pretty scary man in the books. But yeah, you could probably do something with that. I don't think they will. I think if I were Lucasfilm, and Rodrigo, maybe you can weigh in on this as well. If I were Lucasfilm, that James Earl Jones ability to use his voice and create that AI Darth Vader from now until eternity, that is a scarce item. And scarcity means lots of money and means great value. And so I don't think that Lucasfilm would just be like, okay, who wants to have James Earl Jones be their GPS? Who wants James Earl Jones to be the spokesperson for their ice cream cone? Who wants James Earl Jones to do these kinds of things? I think it's too valuable for Lucasfilm to want to just let anybody use it.
You would think so. And there was a moment in time when the company that owns Lucasfilm had that idea and very effectively would stick things in a vault artificially for years, only to release them to great acclaim and lots of money, right?
Yep.
That is not that company anymore.
No.
Now, if that company got the rights to Conan or Kull or whoever they needed to get the rights to, may very well, in fact, try to launch, especially since they the Marvel universe is slipping away from like young boys, which is what they like, a market that they want. If they're like, oh, maybe they'll be into Conan, I think they would 1000% just do whatever loopholes and legal shenanigans they need to have like a talking snake that's like, hello, I'm James Earl Jones the Snake. I'm the bad guy here.
CNN.
Yeah, so it is the Conan Properties International, which I thought at one point was a company out of Sweden. I don't know where they're out of now, but they're the ones that have the rights to all of the Robert E. Howard properties, not just Conan. So they have all the trademark license stuff. The Conan books, or at least the very first appearance of Conan, and presumably Kull, those will all go into public domain in 2028. But just like Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie is public domain, but Mickey Mouse is still copyrighted. So depending on what you're doing with it, the copyright owners could probably, or the trademark owners could come after you for that as well. So I don't know. I think that in this case, the allure of hearing James Earl Jones as Darth Vader would outweigh people going, I don't need to go see Darth Vader because I heard James Earl Jones on this week's Pepsi commercial.
I guess, man. But like, you know about Fortnite, right?
Oh no, what's going on with Fortnite?
Oh Lord. So in Fortnite, they're doing this thing with Star Wars, and you can like there's an AI Darth Vader in Fortnite.
Okay. I know what you're
and you can talk to it, and it talks back to you using an LLM. Yep, LLM.
Yeah.
So, you know, people are over there trying to get him to cuss and try to get him to like say goofy things. And he says lots of goofy things, some of which are goofy because he's a Star Wars character in Fortnite, which makes no sense. Goofy because Star Wars is kind of goofy and that's fun. And sometimes goofy because LLMs are imperfect and weird, right?
Right.
So this is kind of old news. It was out.
Yeah, no, I remember this
several months ago.
I thought this was something new. No, but in that case, though, it's not James Earl Jones pitching an ice cream cone or a new Chevy. It's James Earl Jones's voice as Darth Vader. So I think that falls within that licensure.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm challenging that by saying like
Yes, it is Disney in their
there's
outside box.
there's nothing holy about Darth Vader anymore, right? It's
Right.
like when Darth
Somebody
Vader,
probably convinced him to say "skibbity toilet."
yeah, pretty much, very
Maybe.
easily, almost certainly.
I mean, Darth Vader has always been a young hero at heart, and so being
What?
yeah, I mean, he started
That's
out
right.
as Anakin Skywalker, a young
In
kid who
fact,
wanted to be the hero.
I remember the first time his pod racer started working, his friend walks over to them and is like, Annie, this is so skibbity.
Yeah, and Annie replied back to him, "That's right, Greedo, you are the Riz Rizzler. Let's go go to Ohio and put the fries in the bag." Speaking of Rodrigo, I want to, since we're talking about synergy,
Yep.
since we are talking about synergy, I'm very curious about the Magic the Gathering set that comes out this week.
Yes. Through the Omen Paths.
We've been waiting for this for, it seems like 2 years now.
I have been talking nonstop about Through the Omen Paths. If you follow me on TikTok or YouTube, and if you don't, why not? Also, good luck finding me because I use a different name for everything I do. But I've been talking here on the show as well. I think in the pre-show, I did a thing where like these guys try to guess what the Through the Omen Paths card is. What is Through the Omen Paths? Through the Omen Paths is a set for Magic the Gathering that only exists online because it is the online version of the Spider-Man Magic the Gathering set. Spider-Man said Magic the Gathering, yes. Magic the Gathering has started this thing called Universes Beyond. They started a while ago, but now it's like full on Maximum Overdrive. Maximum Overdrive, not one of the properties. So, for example, the last thing they did was Final Fantasy, and it was a smash success. It broke all the metrics. It killed all the rubrics. It destroyed Kefka's tower. I don't know. So they're like, okay, well, here comes Spider-Man. How's that going to do? The answer is not great. Nobody showed up to the pre-release, but that's not necessarily germane to this. One of the many issues with the Spider-Man set is that one assumes they couldn't secure the rights for it in an electronic fashion. So most likely because Marvel Snap has the rights to Spider-Man. Marvel Snap is put out by a different company. It's not Marvel. Like it's just like a complex licensing agreement with Marvel. So the general consensus, because they're not disclosing this, is that because of Marvel Snap, they couldn't put Spider-Man on Magic Arena and Magic Online. And so what they did is they took every Spider-Man card and they reskinned it, changed its name, changed the art to be characters that exist within Magic the Gathering. Part of the reason why I can't shut up about this is because I find that to be a fascinating exercise, and I've actually really enjoyed looking at this set. But now it's time to actually look at the set. And when you look at the set and how it plays and what it does, it's okay. It's all right.
Did you hype yourself up too much?
No.
Oh, okay.
I am still at this. In fact, the thing that I predicted has already happened. One of the things that I predicted going in was that, and what I compared it to was the MCU, appropriately. Marvel sold the rights or gave out the rights to Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four because it was broke. So when Marvel Studios came around, they couldn't do their biggest property, so they did they did Iron Man. I think a B-lister at best in the comics, and as far as popularity, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say that now because it became such a smash success. But yeah, nobody was clamoring for Iron Man back in the day. Right, because of this weird mistake or series of circumstances that were not good for them, we got the MCU. And say what you want about the MCU, it prints money. It was huge. It's changed the culture to a large degree, right? I predicted going into this that through the Omen Paths, because it's like a weird thing that comes from mishandled properties, was actually going to create something that would be important to Magic the Gathering. And it already is, because the card that was originally the Green Goblin, this has double-faced cards for characters to depict like their transformation. So, for example, Peter Parker, you flip it and it becomes Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Peter Parker's like a little scientist, and then he becomes Spider-Man. The Green Goblin one depicts, Norman Osborn, and then he turns into the Green Goblin. But in through the Omen Paths, what they did is there's this like scientist. I'm looking for him. No, I can't find it. Okay, there it is. Goblin Gene Splice Savant. And then when you transform it, it becomes the thing that he created, which is Fleam. So you've kept it because they kept the creature types. There's a lot of very weird creatures in this set. So when you flip Norman Osborn, he becomes the Green Goblin, a legendary creature, goblin human villain. Right? So they had to create a character who was a goblin human villain. And so they created this character named Fleam, who's like a weird, cute, ugly little goblin with wings and like really big hands. And people have fallen in love with him. People love Fleam. People love Fleam more than Loot, the mascot that Magic was trying to push. But they were like, no, if you try to push him, we don't care. We don't care about John Cena. We want to get into like whoever this guy is with the weird face. So already Magic is scrambling to get like
Flea Mania.
Magic is scrambling to create cosmetics centered around Fleam because they weren't trying to do cosmetics from the set because they've been trying to like push it under the rug.
Yeah.
But that's not it. I'm sorry to review the set. Anyway, the set's okay. It doesn't have anything that I care about for my extant decks. There were some cards, and then when I looked at them, I was like, this doesn't do what I want. Like, this is not strong enough for what I'm trying to go for here. There's some cool stuff in it. They've, if you remember the madness mechanic, they've basically improved on it. With an asterisk, like they haven't made it necessarily better for like playing and winning and like you're trying to like get the exploits or whatever. But it's like a more solid version of it called Mayhem, which is great. It's a mechanic name that works for Spider-Man and that works for Magic the Gathering because there's lots of little guys causing mayhem. They have the web slinging mechanic, which they can't use because I'm pretty sure web slinging is trademarked. So it's called N-Web in Magic the Gathering, which is just sounds awful, but it's funny. And that's one where basically you can pull a creature out and pay the N-Web cost to put a creature back in for cheaper than they would normally cost. This plays well with the last set, stuff like Void. There's lots of stuff that cares about creatures coming in and out of the battlefield, so it's fine. And then also going with the villain mechanics, there is, what is it? Conspire? It's not Conspire. It's Connive, which is a mechanic that allows you to draw a card and discard a card. So you draw a card, discard a card, and that triggers the mayhem mechanics, right? So it is synergistic within itself. One of the many things that got screwed up about this set is that it wasn't meant to be a standard legal set. So it started out very small, and then they added a bunch of cards to try to get it to the size that it was supposed to be because they're like, we got to sell Spider-Man. So it's too small to draft, and that has caused draft problems. So the draft format for this guy specifically is different, which is confusing.
Yeah.
And furthermore, again, outside of the scope of this, but the Pro Tour that's going to happen that should have Spider-Man is going to use the previous set because you basically can't draft Spider-Man. Like, Magic is not confident that putting Spider-Man draft in a large or putting a large spotlight on it is going to look good for them. So that's great. Anyway, 3 slices of meatloaf. It's fine, guys. It's fine. As a weird little strange nodule moment for Magic the Gathering, I love it. I love that all of this messed up stuff has happened to give us this set that is very weird, and I will always look fondly on it. And mark my words, it's not just Fleam. Other weird stuff are going to come out of this one, and you can look forward to the Avengers set, which they also don't have the rights to, which will be another Through the Omen Path set. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the little Fleam cosmetic stickers and everything. You're right. I kind of want it, and I haven't played Magic the Gathering Arena in probably 5 years, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah, 5, maybe 6 years since I last played it. So yeah, I can see some people getting into this. So just as kind of some context for listeners, if you are over on the Major Spoilers Video YouTube channel, youtube.com/Major Spoilers Video, I have been playing Legendary DXP, which is the electronic version of Marvel Legendary, the card game, the deck building card shuffling game that people enjoy, and I still enjoy a lot as well. But I just don't like dragging out the board and all the cards and blah 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 blah. Although, stand by, a little tease there, stand by.
Sure.
But the amazing thing is, you can go, and I've been looking at this over the last couple of weeks as I've been putting up the DXP episodes, is you can go and find the 1-to-1 lineup of the DXP characters with the Marvel card character.
Right.
And it's the exact same thing. Legendary Upper Deck did not have the digital rights to, and they couldn't get the digital rights to, probably not because of Rivals, but probably because of Snap. And no, Snap was way later than that. There were some other things that were out that they couldn't have the digital rights to. It wasn't part of their license. And so they had to create this Olamyth setting with all of these high fantasy characters and just take the text from one card and transfer it over to the digital card. That's exactly what's going on here. So I like to tell my students, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. If you want to make it nerdy and pop culture-y, Magic the Gathering doing the exact same thing that Upper Deck did, but like 10 years later, just goes to show you that pay attention. You're going to see these things pop up.
I mean, tale as old as time. Mortal Kombat was going to be a Jean-Claude Van Damme game, right?
But here's a prediction. At some point, Magic is going to lose the license to all this Marvel stuff. Now, by then, those cards will be out of any kind of tournament play, right? Or any kind of, can you still use them in Commander? Probably not. I don't know.
You can use them in Commander, and you can use them in like Vintage and Legacy, but these cards are generally not strong enough for Vintage and Legacy.
Okay, so guess what? They're going to, these cards, not this year, not next year, but I'm going to bet within 5 years, we will see this deck get reprinted because they can't print any more Spider-Man stuff or Marvel stuff in general.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to
refresh the cards. It'll refresh their IP for this Fleam's character and everything else.
Yeah.
And people will say, but this is just like Spider-Man. And then Magic will say, yes, but you can play this deck right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Interesting. Readers, what do you think? Do you like the Magic the Gathering? Are you down for this September 25th release? Are you down for getting some Fleam avatar sleeves and sticker cosmetics on October 1st? Matthew, are you down for this? Do you even play Arena at all?
No, and I thought Fleam was the number that came between 6 and 7.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to know what people think. If they're going to get this, I know if Rob were here, he'd be like, I've already got all of the Spider-Man stuff because that's Rob. And I know he works at a store where he can get access to that stuff. But I'm interested to see, are you Team Spider-Man or are you Marvel Arena and you will settle for Through the Omen Paths? Let us know over on our Discord server. We can't wait for you to join. Right now, hundreds of awesome listeners are already getting extra shows, behind-the-scenes gossip, and early episode drops, and you could be one of those people. It's just $5 a month at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Don't wait until next week's episode to join. Sign up today and start enjoying bonus content the moment you do. Speaking of bonus content, I went the other day. We have almost, let me double check. I want to say we have almost 500 Major Spoilers podcast pre-shows that people have access to, like right now when they join. I find that both scary and amazing at the same time. Right?
Amazing.
Scare amazing indeed. Let me look at our collections. That's the other thing when you go up to the Patreon page. I've put everything into specific collections, and you can go and say, oh, I'm only interested in the Major Spoilers art, or I'm only interested in the pre-show stuff. Well, just go into the collection. It's right there. 330, actually 331 after this week's pre-show. 330 pre-shows that people access and unlock the minute that they become that silver level patron. That's pretty awesome. At least I think. You know what else is awesome?
What's
Halloween, spooky season. We are officially into fall. And man, fall is my favorite season. It has been unfortunately rainy, which means I can't go out and walk in the morning, but it is cool. It's rainy in the mornings. The leaves are starting to change just ever so slightly. The constellations that I love, Orion is now out. It's going to soon be not constellation, but nebula season. I cannot wait. And one of the other things is Halloween. And of course, during spooky season, right here on Major Spoilers, we are taking a look at scary comics. Or maybe not. This week we are looking at the 3-issue run of Tales of the Ghost Castle from DC Comics. This was released, I want to say, in 71?
Issue 1.
Oh, 75.
Had a street date of 1975. I want to say like February 75?
Yeah, so June of 75 is what the cover date is. 1975, this is after the first revision of the Comic Code Authority. For those of you that have listened to the Comic Code Authority episodes that I've done here on Major Spoilers Podcast, we know that in the first iteration of the Comic Code Authority, anything having to do with ghosts, ghouls, zombies, wolfmans. So Marv Wolfman couldn't get his name on the cover of a comic, literally. And so there was a lot of rebellion at that time about, look what you're doing to our characters. And so in the first revision of the Comic Code Authority in 1971, they started to allow for more horror comics to be introduced back onto the shelves. At this point, EC Comics is basically gone because the code was specifically written to force Gaines out of business. And then sell
Gaines
Mad
was gone
Magazine.
by the early 60s.
And then force the Mad Magazine into popularity. And so one of the early offerings that we see from DC Comics when they can officially do spooky comics is Ghost Castle. And go ahead.
Do you want to know what I noticed about these 3 issues? And I actually had to go down a rabbit hole to figure out.
Sure.
Okay, so the cover of issue 1 is drawn by the late Ernie Chan, who was sometimes, due to a translation error on his immigration papers, credited as Ernie Schwa. And the first story, Nestor Redondo, second story, Ruben Yandok, these are all Filipino creators. And I started going through the issues, and issue 2 has E.R. Cruz in it, Alex Nino. And I'm like, are these guys all part of the kind of like the same group? And apparently what happened was in the early 70s, Joe Orlando and Paul Levitz were working with an artist named Tony DeZuniga. Tony was a co-creator of Jonah Hex. And Tony was like, I am Filipino. There are a ton of really talented artists in the Philippines. And so Levitz and Orlando literally went to the Philippines and started poaching their artists and getting guys like Nestor Redondo and Alfredo Alcala and Jerry Talak. And these 3 issues are just literally a showcase of all of these names that I'm like, oh my God, these are all of the really huge, really talented characters and artists and creators who I think of as part of that, that wave of Filipino creators. I didn't realize that DC actually targeted and went out and did like an ECW invasion storyline to get all of these creators to work for them in the 70s.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, certainly the Philippines have been a place where artists have been since then. I don't know if DC is the first company to pilfer,
Certainly not.
to hire
No.
heavily from the Philippines. But that's still a big case today, where you will see a lot of your favorite artists are Philippine related, Filipino, Thai, Korean, in that South Pacific area. So that's cool. That's a cool little piece. So neat. Cool history stuff, ladies and gentlemen, right here on the Major Spoilers podcast that you didn't know that you wanted, but now that you've heard it, you absolutely do want it. That's fascinating. I kind of wish I could say the same thing about these stories. I don't mean to be negative, but these are still super tame. I think the scariest story is the very first one, where the child of Garden of Graves, where she's like offing her steps brothers and sisters with a shovel and burying them in the backyard because she wants to be an only child and wants her parents' attention. I think that's the most intense story out of all of them. The rest are just kind of like, yeah, okay.
The DC had, I think, 1968 was the debut of House of Mystery.
Yeah.
House of Secrets was a little bit earlier, but DC had they had terrible terms for it, but basically they were kind of just the suspense and horror comics, and then they had a few that were your Adam Strange type adventure comics, and they're just kind of these genre books, and in a lot of ways they end up being kind of I'm going to give a bunch of scripts to these artists, and we're going to have a bunch of these scripts. So there's a lot of Paul Levitz in here. There's a lot of Joe Orlando in here. And the thing about it is they do feel like these could have been anywhere. This could have been a House of Mystery. This could have been a House of Secrets. This could have been a Tales of the Unknown.
Yeah, but that had to be Ghost Castle, because this is where we get the introduction of Lucian into this world of DC horror, because then we've got them all together so that years later a certain writer could pilfer them all and put them all into his Vertigo comic.
He didn't pilfer them.
Sure he did.
He retconned them. And that also is interesting. You know, if you were someone who had at one point a real strong connection to those stories and feel like those stories are no longer palatable because of real world events, this is a way to go and say, hey, let's see what Lucian was like when he was hanging out. And that's interesting. I
mean, Rodrigo, he had a wolf man as a pet.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't. Sometimes you have a wolf man.
That's spooky scary right there, correct? Right?
And he named him Rover, which, you know, you mix the mundane with the horror, and you get kind of Hordane, or I don't know what you really call it. Like the story where the devil shows up, and the devil basically works at a publishing company, much like DC.
Well, he's an accounting firm. So Rodrigo, what do you think about the Wolfmans and the Lucians and all the scary or maybe lack of scary in this series?
So I'm okay with Lucian and his werewolf being kind of funny, like, you know, that's part of the thing, like the Crypt Keeper and like the Creepo guy and all of those guys that were the host of horror anthologies. They're like being funny and being spooky at the same time. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. 100% of these stories needed more time, like or another pass, but definitely more time. Like you could have taken that like Bad Seed story and looked at it through a different lens, so that maybe we don't know right away that maybe Lucian doesn't tell us 10 times that this super evil child is about to do something evil in the garden, and then when she does something evil in the garden, we're like, well, we knew that. Right?
Well, but now on the other hand, there is that story, The Inheritors, where these quote unquote humans come to Earth and they're trying to fight off these post-apocalyptic savages, only to find out that these are like fishmen instead of
Well, they themselves are mutants, right? They think they're like the real humans, but they themselves are mutants. That was a good one. That was a good, solid Twilight Zone kind of story. And in fact, actually, weirdly, the sci-fi ones might have been the stronger ones, like the one with the snakes.
Yes.
I did like the snakes.
That one felt complete. Like, even if you think, well, that wasn't scary or whatever, it felt like a complete little story. As opposed to, say, the one where, the devil is a part-timer, or I guess a full-timer, and is going and trying to corrupt the dentist, and the dentist is just kind of like, no.
I want to be a sadist. Yeah, he should have gone after him for sadism.
Yeah, but that's like an afterthought that like Lucian throws in.
Yeah.
Like they that could have been written into the story if we hadn't spent maybe 10 minutes seeing what exactly the day-to-day like office conversation is for a bunch of devils.
Yeah.
Right? Like these, like all of these stories, or most of these stories, could have been fine. Just needed another pass. They needed, like, honestly, if you just reframe the point of view, if it had been from the point of view of the dentist, leave something a little bit to like find out. But almost 100% of them, right? It's like the ones that work are the ones where we find out along with the story what's happening. All the ones that don't work are the ones where Lucian is like, let me tell you the ending before we even start.
Now, I will say, in the one that's called A Soul a Day Keeps the Devil Away, even though the story was somewhat lame, I did love how the artists, because all the demons are walking around naked, the careful placement of folders and briefcases and flames of fire. I just thought that was really, really well done. I also like the art in the mushroom one, where the guy buries his uncle in the mushrooms, and then the next day he's dead and he's sprouted with fungus. That one's creepy. I will admit, I like mushrooms, so I do not want to wake up with fungus growing all over me like that. The devil dog one, where they think that the son is the problem because he's special, and so therefore he must be killed, and then it turns out to be the dog all along. It's like, So I don't know. It's a very mixed bag, I guess, is where I'm coming from on all of this. It's still a fascinating look at historical comic books, but it's very mixed bag.
This 3 issues really, for me, as someone who's read way too many of the Bronze Age horror anthologies from your Charlton, your DC. EC was definitely gone, but their soul was still out there because you could see even
because
ACG
they sold
Comics,
it to DC Comics.
Ooh, the guys who gave us Herbie the Fat Fury still had, horror books or suspense books or whatever you want to call them, where it's like arcane and strange and bizarre things happen. But these 3 issues are like a time capsule. And you're right, they are all over the place. They're uneven, but when you look at the things that do work, first of all, if you want to know that a story is going to work, you look at the front page, and if the writer says Koeniger, you know this story is going to work, because Koeniger knows how to take an 8-page chunk of stuff and make it into something crazy. But you also, Alex Nino, who is just absolutely, and I guess I know I overuse this word, absolutely artistic legend in the right circles. Alex Nino does the Inheritor story that you were talking about. So cool, so just weird and outre, and not like nothing you read on a regular basis. It's even now I'm looking at this and going, this is crazy. This is just beyond anything that I expect to see, especially in, a 7-page horror story. And I feel like that's the joy of this. We have stories that work really well with art that maybe doesn't. And we have stories that don't work with art that's just way, way, way beyond. These people definitely understood the assignment and delivered.
I mean, especially if if you are looking for an ongoing gig, you want to make sure that
Right.
you're putting out your best stuff.
Absolutely. And when Ghost Castle debuted in 75, it really was the end of horror anthologies. The horror anthologies were dying. Charlton's books were on their way out by 69 or 70. Marvel's horror anthologies, you may recall, all turned into superhero books by about 64.
Yeah.
Tales of Suspense, Journey into
Yeah.
Mystery, all of those books were gone. So having this book pop up in 1975 is weird anyway. It would be like, hey, we're going to do a New Mutants knockoff in 1997, which, by the way, they did, and it wasn't good. But I really like just the experience of picking up and reading these 3 random comics, because it reminds me of what it was like to just go and pick up a bunch of comics from a box in somebody's basement or someone's driveway. Someone's selling them. There's a bookstore that has a big pile of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just kind of like, hey, this is how I got hooked on comic book storytelling. This is how the visual and narrative collaboration
Right.
that is comics go crazy. You know, I love that stuff.
Yeah. And I'm guessing it just didn't sell well. That's why it was canceled after 3 issues.
I don't think any horror. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I have the hookups. Let me dig on that, and I'll be right back with you.
Rodrigo, what are your big thoughts on this besides, another pass?
It is like, I like horror anthologies. I've read a bunch of them, and I guess I was just happy. I was happy with it. I wasn't like, it's like if you've sat down to read horror anthologies, they're pretty bad. Even the good ones have lots of stories that are just like meh. Like half the time I'm in it for the art. Like you said, they made the baffling choice of making that that devil one where like everybody was naked in hell, and so had to make like, following that interesting choice, had to make a lot of other interesting choices to not depict full frontal nudity in this book. Right. So okay. So that was something to look at. That was something where I'm like, every page I'm like, this is how they're hiding the thing in this one. So that was something. And it's kind of the same thing for all of them, because all the artists are different. It's like, at least art wise, they were all always something to look at, right? So
yeah,
I was perfectly entertained. I think it might just be a thing where like horror anthologies are just something that I'm kind of into. So I was already predisposed to like this.
I do like the concept of anthologies, and I do enjoy reading anthologies, knowing that sometimes you're going to get really good stuff and sometimes you're going to get really bad stuff, but oftentimes it's a mix of both. And so by the time I'm getting to the 3rd issue, maybe it's the 2nd issue where they're trying to go and find the Lost City of Gold, I'm just like, this story isn't for me. I'll look at the pictures really quick to try to suss out what happens, and then I'm going to go and read the next story and see if that's any more interesting. And so I think in that sense, when you read a horror anthology series, I kind of expect for me to be bored in some places and interested in others, and maybe because I'm going to skip some stuff because I'm not interested this time, maybe I'll come back later and read it again and get a second passive enjoyment at the book. So yeah, I think for me, whether it's a superhero anthology or a horror anthology or a sci-fi or whatever anthology that companies are putting out, and by the way, companies, feel free to put out your anthologies to test new stuff. I'm okay with that, knowing that I'm going to get a mix of good and bad, even with the cover price of $4.99. That's not what this was. This was 25 cents. But today, if you did an anthology, it would be 80 pages and it would be like $4.99 or $5.99. And if 1/3 of the book is not very good, I still think that that's worth the price. So from a historical perspective, I think Tales of the Ghost Castle is interesting. You can buy the digital versions. We've got a link to it in our show notes. But I'm going to say give it a pass. I think if you come across it by accident, or you really want to check out a mushroom guy that gets turned into a deadly fungus, go for it, buy it. But overall, I think there's better scary comics out there. Matthew, final thoughts from you.
I would agree with the caveat that if it's a goofy, crazy, over the top kind of a horror or suspense or what I like to call the quasi EC comics, I always say check them out. At the absolute worst, the worst thing you're ever going to get is something where you're like, oh my God, that art was amazing. Who is that guy? And I think that is really, for me, the takeaway of this, of looking at this. I went down a rabbit hole and went looking, for things about these writers, things about these stories, and went, oh, wow, here's an interesting thing that I didn't even know. And I've been reading comics since 1982, ladies and jelly spoons. So for me, I'd say check it out. But if this is in your library, you're probably in the dreaming and you may need to ask Lucian how to get home. But definitely, if you run into it, you probably won't see it in a quarter bin, but maybe a dollar bin somewhere. Or heck, if they, give us a crazy collection of Bronze Age horror stuff in the year or two, definitely it's worth checking out.
Rodrigo, final thoughts from you, sir.
I mean, I would say check it out for two reasons. One, if you're trying to get through Sandman, which I know we're tiptoeing around, but it's on Netflix or whatever. People are interested in it. And you're like, yeah, I want to find out where all these characters come from. Good luck. That's going to take you forever. But here's one of them. And two, yeah, if you're interested in like sort of that history of horror anthologies, this is like the end of them. Like by this point, people were done with them. And companies weren't trying to like innovate them or shush them up, right? It's like they were just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah.
This comic only went for 3 issues. So kind of weirdly in and of itself, that's interesting and sort of worth at least taking a peek at. So I would say if you can find it, borrow it, or maybe buy it if you find it on the cheap.
All right, there you go. Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, dear listener, for being part of the show this week. If you want to get access to the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show, where we talk some politics stuff, we talk some crazy weird stuff, we talk Grogu and the Mandalorian, or the Mandalorian and the Grogu, if you like Pedro Pascal that much. But we do that over the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show that you can find over at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Next time on the show, we are diving into the secret history, the untold history. The names have been changed to protect the history of comic books as we take a look at Howard Chaykin's Hey Kids Comics right here on the Major Spoilers podcast. Why? Because we know that you love comics and we do too, and we will talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, they kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler! What a major spoiler! Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm Stark Raven, rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast, being shot up in a fun bee in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa, 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 whoa. major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.